Three noblewomen enjoy a sunlit garden party. A celebratory banner announces the Blenheim Empire Expo. Guests excitedly discuss the opera singer Antonelli's appearance. The expo also features a best-selling authors event. Other attractions include a luxurious hot spring town, and even rare delicacies like snow wine. A blonde woman in a beautiful gown enjoys the ball. She scans the crowd with a graceful, knowing smile. A hand touches her shoulder as someone calls her name, Annette. A dark-haired man named Loic suddenly embraces a startled Annette from behind, telling her how worried he was when he couldn't find her, while she pleads with him to stop as people are watching. He leans in close, ignoring the crowd and demanding his daily kiss. She reflects on how everything she touches becomes a massive success. She even managed to melt the cold-hearted Grand Duke of the North. She seriously considers her incredible new reality. Was she truly born to be a duchess? 1 year ago, at the Fries estate, a man's hand slams down with a loud smack as he rages about the disgrace of the Duke sending a representative and only 500 deniers for the marriage. Annette listens silently as he blames her for the Duke's shameless conduct. Internally, Annette finds it ridiculous that she's expected to handle a Duke she's never met, even knowing the story's plot. She recalls that she possessed the world of a novel where a saintess from the slums falls in love with a Duke. She is Annette Friess, the illegitimate daughter in the story. Annette is the villainess, born from the Marchioness's affair, who torments the heroine to ruin the main couple's romance after marrying the Duke. Her original fate in the novel is to be executed by hanging, her eyes narrow with unyielding determination to survive. As her father plans to postpone the wedding, Annette interjects with a new idea to hold it at the temple, thinking this is her chance. She explains that with the temple, the Duke's budget will be enough. Her father questions a wedding without guests for reputation's sake, but she argues the oath is what's truly important. Saying she doesn't want to trouble him, she watches as he weighs reputation against money. As the scales tip toward money, her father smiles, remarking it's the first useful thing she's ever done for the family. Annette smiles, adding one condition: the high priest himself must conduct the ceremony. She celebrates internally as her first goal is achieved. A voice suddenly calls her plan ridiculous, surprising her. She turns to face her brother, Ferdinand Friess, heir to the marquisate. Ferdinand chides her, asking if a guestless wedding was to please their father, and warns that the Duke of Blenheim will only look down on her for it. Annette admits she knows, recalling that their family refused to support the Northern War against demonic beasts. The former Duke of Blenheim made a blood pact with the dragon and died defending the North. The bloody history of their family's betrayal means the Blenheims will of course hate them. Realizing she knew and that their father is using her, Ferdinand urges her not to throw her life away. Annette dismisses his worry, calmly stating this is how she can be useful. She internally finds his concern admirable, but insufficient as he falls silent. Pushing him aside in her mind, she thinks he's a jerk and moves on. 2 weeks later, Annette reflects that she's settling in well and isn't even eager to return to her original world. However, she acknowledges that her treatment at the estate is far from great. She turns a corner, startling 2 maids who were gossiping about her. As the maids scurry away, she notes they avoided her on purpose. She smirks, remembering her stressful past life in advertising and thinking this is nothing by comparison. She admits that while being ignored can be convenient, there's a problem. She despairs over her intense boredom, a dopamine junkie deprived of modern stimulation. Trapped behind the estate gates, she realizes that being a duchess would grant her more freedom than she has now. Clenching her fists, she resolves not to miss out on the adventure awaiting in the snowy northern lands. She envisions the grand castle and charming villages of the north, dreaming of her escape. She excitedly anticipates meeting the cold, handsome Duke of Blenheim. The scene transitions to the snowy, imposing castle of Blenheim. A voice from the ducal estate reluctantly accepts the marriage terms. The Duke of Blenheim smirks while reading the Marquis's letter, impressed by his nerve. He admits to his aide his mistake, thinking a small sum would deter the marriage, and asks what to do. As a fire rages, a voice asks what the alternative is. The Duke coldly declares that Annette will never set foot in Blenheim. As snow falls on the castle, an aide asks how he plans to refuse her. Aide Perel warns the Duke that he can't just abandon the bride after the wedding. The Duke responds with a cold, intimidating glare. Perel is startled and confused by his master's silence. A red-haired knight bursts into laughter, declaring it a great idea to leave her. Captain Demiche advises severing ties immediately to prevent the Marquis from planting spies. The Duke asks who among them will handle the situation before it gets out of hand. The room falls silent as his men await his command. After his aide argues against the plan, the Duke declares that Perel will go, much to Perel's dismay. The Duke orders Vice Captain Hedrick to take over escort duty and sends Perel on errands in the capital. Resigned to marrying his enemy's daughter, the Duke plans to simply divorce her later. On her wedding day, a maid roughly brushes Annette's hair. The maid snidely remarks that Annette's hair isn't blonde, just prematurely gray. Annette looks in the mirror, surprised by her own beauty. The maid falsely claims the Marquis is worried about Annette's treatment in the north. Annette smiles, knowing her father only sent attendants he handpicked. She sees through his plot, realizing they are spies meant to watch her in Blenheim. She smiles, with quiet confidence. Annette resolves that things will not go her father's way. At the temple, Annette and a proxy stand before the priest to begin their vows. Annette notes the Duke sent a proxy, while a nervous Perel thinks she's beautiful and recites the vows for Loic Blenheim. Annette calmly gives her own vow to her new partner. As their hands touch, the proxy's hand trembles nervously. The ring exchange is complete. The bride and proxy stand together, officially wed. An attendant sighs in relief, dreading having to deal with the illegitimate brat again. The attendant complains about the Marquis's shamelessness before calling out for Lady Annette. She finds only Annette's wedding dress left behind on a couch. A tap sounds as someone walks briskly away. Perel flees, determined to escape before the Duke arrives. He plans to leave a letter explaining his urgent departure. Annette suddenly appears, stopping him and asking where he's going. A flustered Perel exclaims he was leaving before his grace arrived, and panics when Annette catches his hand. She brightly tells him they should go together, leaving him in despair. He stammers, confused as she explains she's going to meet her husband. Annette smiles triumphantly, realizing the Duke truly planned to abandon her. Perel nervously apologizes, explaining they must leave but that her carriage isn't there. She reveals she brought her own rugged carriage, calmly dismissing his concerns about its noisy wheels. When he protests the difficult journey, she confidently insists it won't be a problem. Perel is left utterly speechless by her preparedness. Annette points out the group of men in black cloaks, identifying them as her escort. The knights are shocked to be called an escort, while Perel scolds them for their poor manners as Annette sizes them up approvingly. Annette cheerfully dismisses Perel's concern while he panics over her plan. She waves reassuringly, telling him not to worry and to go on ahead. Gazing out the window of her carriage, she thinks to herself, finally. Annette throws her arms up in pure joy, celebrating her freedom from the Fries family. Relaxing in her carriage, she muses that Sir Perel is surprisingly soft-hearted and delicate. A servant interrupts her thoughts, presenting a golden box from the young master. She asks if her brother Ferdin sent it, and the servant confirms it was a parting gift. Holding the ornate box, Annette wonders how Ferdin knew she would be leaving. She asks the servant about the reason for the gift, and he guesses it's for her wedding. He adds that the Marquis himself attended the ceremony before he left. Annette is stunned to hear that her father actually came to her wedding. 2 carriages, one grand and one rugged, depart from the temple grounds with their escorts. A clatter sounds as the Fries family attendant waves goodbye to a departing carriage. The maid, Janet, calls out in a panic, desperately searching for Lady Annette. Perel stops the maid, recognizing her as Janet. He asks Janet if she has seen Annette, and she confirms that her grace has already left. Janet panics, recalling her orders to bring Annette back, while she and Perel realize Annette has gone north. Safely in her carriage, Annette clutches the box with a victorious smirk. Her humble carriage and its escort of knights travel through a dense forest. Annette thoughtfully examines the box, pondering if it is truly Ferdin's wedding gift. She shoos her attendant away, eyeing the box with intense suspicion. A flash of light emanates from the box as Annette opens it with a gasp. Inside lies a breathtaking jewelry, set with large, sparkling blue gemstones. She lifts a beautiful silver and blue necklace, her eyes wide with admiration. Tucked inside the lid, she discovers a small, folded note. Annette plucks out the note, eager to see what message her brother has sent her. The note simply offers an emergency contact, leaving her utterly bewildered, utterly flabbergasted. She struggles to believe this was truly a wedding gift from her brother. She reflects on his unexpected kindness, a gift, an emergency contact, and his presence at her wedding. A warm, serene smile spreads across her face as she holds the gift close. Meanwhile, her escort knights discuss abandoning her at a campsite, much to her shock. A young, orange-haired knight furiously defends her honor, calling his comrades cruel jerks. The knight passionately vows his loyalty to her, promising to stay by her side until the end. She turns and finds the stoic Vice Captain Hedrick, standing silently behind her. Annette flinches, stammering an apology as Hedrick looks on with a questioning gaze. She frantically tries to explain that she wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. Perel and other knights greet Vice Captain Hedrick, who asks for an update on the situation. Perel hesitates, looking troubled as he begins to explain their predicament. He reports that they are now escorting the Grand Duchess to Blenheim. After a tense pause, Vice Captain Hedrick grimly accepts the new reality. Annette takes a walk alongside the carriage, enjoying the fresh air to clear her mind. She accidentally runs into the knights, feigning surprise to seem natural. Hedrick formally addresses her as Your Grace and introduces himself as the Vice Captain. He promises her safe passage to Blenheim, though his men look displeased with the arrangement. Annette places her trust in him, confidently stating that she'll be counting on Sir Hedrick. She privately considers this an opportunity to redeem herself in their eyes. Looking at a map, Hedrick outlines their plan to stay at an inn in the town of Marhen. Annette suggests the nicer Rauji Inn instead, but Perel warns it's likely already full. She smiles charmingly, insisting they should at least check since it's nearby. As Perel protests about their large group, Hedrick cuts him off and orders them to the Rauji Inn. Sir Perel nervously questions the vice captain's decision, suggesting they can camp outside if Annette gets a room. The vice captain curtly orders everyone to the Rauji Inn, much to Annette's surprise, while two knights grumble about having to camp. Annette smirks, realizing he's forcing her to take responsibility for her choice. Sir Perel worriedly asks Annette if she will be all right with the plan. As Sir Perel hopes for at least one room, Annette confidently agrees with him. A tiny Annette thinks to herself that the aide is surprisingly kind, worrying that she might be disliked. She reassures Sir Perel with a sly grin, promising him a big surprise. Their group arrives at a large, welcoming inn under a starry night sky. An orange-haired knight reports to the vice captain that, as feared, no rooms are available. The vice captain remains stoic, having expected this, while Sir Perel despairs over the news. The vice captain inwardly questions if Annette had a plan or was just acting on a whim. He concludes this is better, hoping that the hardship of camping will make her give up. As he orders a departure to Marhen, Annette appears in the doorway, asking why they aren't going inside. Sir Perel frantically explains there are no rooms, but Annette insists he check again, exasperating him as other knights grow restless. Just as Sir Perel apologizes for the need to camp, she presents a reservation confirmation. He stares at the document in confusion, asking what it is. Annette smiles triumphantly, telling him to show the reservation to the innkeeper. She proudly announces she has reserved rooms and dinner for everyone, shocking the entire group. The vice captain and the other knights stare in utter disbelief. Annette's voice cheerfully suggests it's time to eat. She smiles, pleased that her meticulous plan has succeeded. A flashback begins, taking place a few days prior at the Intelligence Guild. Several pouches of gold sit on a table, payment for her sold accessories. Annette looks at a small money pouch, disappointed by the unexpectedly low amount. She questions the guild agent about the price, but he insists it was the best he could get. Resigned, she notes the Marquis wouldn't give her fine jewelry anyway, as the guild agent asks why she came to them instead of a jeweler. She explains she needed to build a secret stash without the Marquis finding out, and decided to make a request while she was there. Annette specifies her request. She needs to know the exact arrival and departure times for a group getting from Blenheim. Determined, she recalls that the original story's characters tried to leave her behind and resolves not to let it happen. The guild agent explains that Blenheim's gate schedule is highly confidential information. She slides a heavy bag of gold across the desk, slyly asking if he can't just check the gate list. The guild agent's expression shifts to a greedy, complicit smile. He concedes they do have a list, and an ecstatic Annette demands to see it immediately. She reads the document, realizing with alarm that the group plans to leave right after the wedding. As she puzzles over their rushed plan, the agent mentions they should have stayed at the famous Rauji Inn, sparking her interest. He describes the inn's exquisite food, prepared by a former palace chef. He warns her that its rooms fill up before sunset, causing Annette to have a sudden realization. Clutching the schedule, she understands exactly what she must do. She asks if there's a way to reserve a room in advance, but the agent says it's not possible. He explains they don't hold rooms for potential no-shows, but her hand holds out a bribe. Annette smiles knowingly, asking what would happen if she paid in advance. Back in the present, the chef welcomes the group to a grand feast, inviting them to eat their fill. A beautifully prepared grilled fish is presented as part of the lavish meal. As a roasted chicken is shown, a nervous knight asks the vice commander if it's okay for them to eat this meal. The knights are all seated at a long table, laden with a magnificent feast. The vice commander gives his approval, and the grateful knights begin to eat with gusto. Annette watches them fondly, thinking they deserve a good meal after a long journey. Sir Perel, now enjoying his meal, asks Annette how she possibly managed to reserve the rooms. He adds that he heard the Rauji Inn is the most sought-after lodging in the capital. Sipping her wine, Annette playfully asks if he really thought they'd travel all day and return without resting. Annette explains she treated the knights to repay their efforts, telling them to relax as she dines upstairs. She cheerfully wishes them a speedy recovery from their journey. As the knights feast, Annette smiles, hoping to raise their affection level. Her kind gesture leaves a lasting impression on the men. Two knights express their surprise, admitting they didn't expect her to care about them so much. As one knight notes she's not as bad as the rumors claimed, Perel watches silently. The scene transitions to the exterior of the quaint inn. The next morning, Annette discovers the knights passed out from drinking all night. Chuckling at the scene, she thinks at least everyone enjoyed themselves. A voice calls out to her as she observes the aftermath. The orange-haired knight, Leon, greets her, and she warmly asks if he slept well. Leon is stunned that she knows his name, stammering that he slept very well. He reveals a large pot, explaining he's made tomato stew for the knights. He explains that spicy tomato stew is a Blenheim tradition after a feast, and Annette correctly guesses it's a hangover dish. Annette ponders the idea of a spicy hangover cure. Leon offers to have her meal brought to her room. She surprises him by declaring she'll eat with the knights, despite his protest that it's commoners' food. As Annette prepares to eat, Perel warns her the stew is very spicy, but she confidently says she loves it. The knights stare intently as she takes her first bite, making her feel like a foreigner trying a new intense dish. She savors the flavor, realizing how much she's missed spicy food since coming to this world. She eagerly drinks the fiery stew straight from the bowl, delighting in its Korean-like flavor. Her enthusiastic eating leaves the knights completely shocked. With a sigh of satisfaction, she finishes the bowl and declares it's amazing. The knights are amazed she found it refreshing, with Leon noting that most outsiders can't handle the spice. Annette happily asks for a second bowl as Perel looks on with an intrigued smile. Back at Blenheim Castle, a letter from Perel announces that the Duchess is coming with them and needs a room prepared. The Duke of Blenheim reads the unexpected report with a serious expression. His butler points out that this development seems to contradict the Duke's previous orders. Whitley, the butler, summarizes Perel's report on Annette's surprisingly good behavior and insists they must prepare for her arrival, leaving the Duke confused. The Duke muses that any other noblewoman would have been deeply humiliated by the groomless wedding. He wonders about the rumors surrounding her, from being a villainess to being connected to a cure for demon's blood. Deciding not to trust rumors, he admits she's no ordinary woman and thinks her strength might be an asset in the harsh north. He quickly stops himself, questioning his own train of thought. He stands, resolving that he can't simply send her away after her long journey. He orders Whitley to prepare a room for her but plans to send her back in a few days, a decision the butler accepts. The Duke coldly affirms this is the only kindness he will show his wife in name only. Meanwhile, Annette laughs and enjoys her meal, blissfully unaware of the Duke's plans. Their party departs from the Rauji Inn, continuing their journey. The carriage travels onward, heading straight for the snowy northern lands. A knight grumbles about the hassle of heating water for the Duchess when they can just use the river. He stops short, surprised to find Annette by the river, wearing a simple cloak and cap. He playfully flicks her strange hat, teasing her about it. Realizing his mistake, Sir Johas frantically apologizes to Her Highness. Annette smiles kindly, asking if he also came to wash his face. A flustered Johas explains he was actually there to heat up water for her. She reassures him with a bright smile, saying the cold river water is perfectly refreshing. She walks away, telling him to wash up comfortably and leaving him completely baffled. Johas recalls her unexpected actions, from cooking them a delicious meal to washing up on her own. He remembers being shocked to find her sleeping soundly in a bizarre caterpillar-shaped sleeping bag in the woods. Amidst the snowy landscape, a voice calls for everyone to head out. Annette secures their luggage, noting they still have a long way to go. A knight surprises her, insisting they should handle the heavy chests. Leon smiles, calling them comrades, as the knights finally begin to trust her. Sitting by a campfire, she reflects on how wary the knights were at first. She chuckles, thinking they've gotten so comfortable, they no longer see her as a noble. Sir Johas eagerly offers her a snack to try, which she happily accepts. She decides to use the knights' newfound trust to learn about the Grand Duke. She casually asks a surprised Sir Johas about the Duke's food preferences. Johas bluntly states the Duke eats everything, as if he were chewing tree bark. She then asks about his hobbies, jokingly guessing he slays magical beasts. When asked about his personality, Johas thinks for a moment before calling him curt. Another knight chimes in, comparing the Duke's cold silence to an icy cliff. Perel defends the Duke as a good person, putting a flustered Leon and Yohas on the spot. Leon struggles to find the right words to praise his captain. Leon and Yohas proudly list the Duke's accomplishments, becoming the youngest swordmaster, slaying beasts with pure sword energy, and deeply cherishing his people. As they praise his devotion to the North, she realizes this isn't the kind of information she wanted. She concludes that a strong man who loves the North will surely despise a Marquis's daughter like her. Her resolve hardens as she embraces her role as a workhorse, determined to get close to the Duke. As their carriage arrives, she gazes in awe at the vast, snow-covered estate and its enormous castle. Standing in the Grand Hall, she's approached by a somber Perel. Perel regretfully informs her that the Grand Duke is too busy to greet her personally. She smiles graciously, privately thinking she's lucky not to be immediately kicked out. The head butler, Whitley, introduces himself and offers to escort her to her chambers. She accepts his guidance, noting his intimidating northern presence despite his age. He shows her to a luxurious room, promising to send a maid to attend to her. Annette sweetly asks him to inform the Duke that she wishes to see him upon his return. Whitley respectfully agrees, promising to deliver the message as soon as the Duke arrives. Finally alone, Annette stretches out with a joyful sigh. She confidently muses that her plans to win him over might work instantly, as he might fall for her at first sight. She turns to check her appearance in a nearby mirror. She gasps in horror at her reflection, which is covered in dirt and grime from the long journey. Meanwhile, Perel confronts the Duke, demanding to know why he treated their lady so poorly. The Grand Duke coldly questions Perel's sanity for referring to Annette as Our Lady. Perel desperately argues that she traveled a long way and can't just be sent back. The Duke scoffs, asking if the pampered noble lady whined the entire trip, causing Perel to flinch. A flashback shows the Duke watching her modest carriage arrive at the estate. His thoughts drift to her hair as a feather floats past. A brief memory flashes of a curtain being drawn inside her carriage. The Duke sternly orders Perel to send her back to the capital after a few days of rest. It's decided that it would be better for her to return to the capital's comforts soon. The next day, Annette waits on a sofa, wondering where the Duke is. Another day passes as she eats snacks, questioning if he's truly that busy. On the third day, she loses hope, resigning herself to the fact that he won't be coming. After yet another day with no word, she lies defeated on the couch. She sits bolt upright with a sudden realization. He's definitely avoiding her. A fire lights up in her eyes as she resolves to take action herself. Dressed in a new green gown, she considers her next move, feeling that something is strange. Over tea, she informs Whitley that she would like a tour of the castle. When Whitley refuses, citing military security, she boldly asks for the location of the Duke's room to get permission from him directly. The butler Whitley firmly states he cannot reveal the Duke's location. Annette recalls that in the original story, she never even spoke to the Duke. Tapping her foot, she decides it can't be helped. She grins with renewed determination, deciding to find his room herself. She reasons that the Duke's room must have a very fancy door. Facing a long hall of identical doors, she resolves to knock on every single one. Her determined pose shows she's ready for the challenge. She begins her search, trying each door and finding them all locked. Frustrated, she keeps trying doors, discovering most are locked. Her hand stills on a doorknob as she finds a rare unlocked room. She enters to find two maids who greet her nervously as she notes one's sour expression. She interrupts several scenes, from maids wondering about her presence to two muscular bakers needing dough whom she apologizes to. Her mission echoes through the castle. Knock on every door. She brightly celebrates hearing her first response from behind a door. Peeking inside, she finds exhausted administrators, one of whom recognizes her, and she thinks his tired face looks familiar. She gives them a cheerful wave, telling them not to mind her. She asks what room it is, and a man explains it's the office for trainee administrators. She sympathizes with them, recalling her own past as an office trainee with brutal hours. She sincerely thanks the stunned trainees for their dedication to the castle. Waving a cheerful goodbye, she promises to see them next time. The door shuts, leaving the trainees staring in silence. The confused trainees wonder why she visited, with one suggesting she might be a spy. The brown-haired administrator ponders his first encounter with the Duchess. The Duke's aide reports that the Duchess has been seen wandering all over the castle. The aide asks if she's spying, but the Duke calmly dismisses the idea. The aide realizes she is probably just looking for the Duke. With a sigh, the Duke acknowledges her persistence. He recalls the butler's flustered excuses, as a vision of Annette running happily crosses his mind. An unseen person exclaims in shock as Annette dashes enthusiastically down the hall. The Duke's aide starts to speak, but the Duke suddenly grabs and shoves him aside. The stunned aide looks on as the Duke sternly orders him to be quiet. The Duke stares intently down the corridor. On a balcony, the Duke wonders if she saw him, ignoring his aide's plea to meet her. The Duke reflects that he's avoiding the Duchess for her own good. The scene transitions, showing glimpses of the castle's interior. He looks down at his trembling, glowing hands. A painful memory surfaces of him reaching for a dying woman in a pink dress. He believes meeting him would only ruin her life by revealing how awful he is. Snow falls gently on the quiet castle grounds. A new day begins with Annette sitting outside in the cold, sipping tea. Sir Norton suggests she go inside after 3 hours, but she firmly refuses. She points out she can't sneak off to find the Duke while he's watching her. She playfully asks Sir Norton for a hint, but he insists he can't tell her anything. Sir Norton looks away, sweating nervously under her gaze. Annette smiles wryly, thinking the Duke is a jerk for going this far to avoid her. Her expression grows serious as she thinks she only needs to get along with him for a year. She recalls the original story where her family commits treason and is executed. She reaffirms her goal. She must survive as the Duchess until then. Her plan is to stay quiet, get divorced after a year, and disappear. But to do that, she must meet the Duke and negotiate, a thought Sir Norton seems to guess. Sir Norton kindly offers to get her some tomato stew. Intrigued, Annette learns of a place with wonderful Blenheim-style tomato stew. She gets excited, suggesting a full day out with touring, shopping, and a meal. Sir Norton slyly suggests inviting the Duke, casually revealing his room's exact location. A smirk crosses her face as Sir Norton freezes, realizing she's just discovered the Duke's location. Annette later boasts that she found the Grand Duke's room using her amazing deduction skills. She reasoned that the master of the castle would surely have a room with a garden view. With that in mind, she continued her line of thought. She deduced from her seat outside that his room must be the westernmost one. As she sips her tea, she has second thoughts, wondering why he'd be in the cold West Wing. Her eyes widen in surprise as she spots movement in a window. Peering closer, she wonders if the man in the window is the Grand Duke. She lets out a small gasp, seeing him in the exact window she predicted. With wide eyes, she confirms to herself that it's definitely him. Inside, the Duke clutches his chest, startled as if sensing her gaze. He worries that their eyes met and she might have recognized him. Outside, Annette sits calmly with a small, cute chick spirit floating beside her. The Duke turns away from the window, deep in thought. He runs a hand through his hair in frustration, wondering what he was just thinking. He reasons that avoiding her is for the best, as it would be a hassle if she got sick. He glances back towards the window, thinking she really gets on his nerves. The scene shifts to the largest commercial district in the north. Sir Norton shows Annette Gold Lane, a street decorated with real gold, leaving her stunned. He explains the dazzling street is covered in leftover gold leaf from the local mines. Walking on the golden path, she confirms the rumors about the North's immense wealth. She scoffs, annoyed that despite his riches, he only sent 500 deniers for their marriage. A brief flashback shows her dragging a pleading Sir Norton away to avoid causing him trouble. Back in the present, she changes the subject, asking about the most popular shop nearby. Sir Norton nervously admits there aren't many famous shops like the ones in the capital. He explains that the people of the North aren't interested in trends or waiting in lines. Annette understands, concluding that they are practical, if a bit blunt. She notes a shop sign that only has a picture, making it hard to know what's sold inside. Despite the oddities, she decides to browse patiently, hoping to find something special. Time passes as she shops from daytime into the sunset. Utterly drained, she slumps over, having found nothing but weird shops. In one shop, she considered some pretty jewelry, but ultimately hesitated. She tried on a ridiculously tall hat, questioning its bizarre design as the shopkeeper told her to leave. In another store, she finds a pair of beautiful brown gloves she instantly loves. She considers buying them until her eyes catch the shocking price tag. Aghast, she realizes the gloves cost as much as a house and is once again told to leave. Sir Norton catches her as she stumbles away, wondering why shopping was so boring and the vendors so rude. She sighs, figuring that in a remote place like this, friendliness isn't necessary for business. Feeling tired, she decides it's time to eat, and Sir Norton suggests the tomato stew he mentioned earlier. He surprises her by revealing the inn is run by Sir Leon's parents. She recalls Sir Leon and another night enthusiastically recommending his family's inn and their specialty, tomato stew. Delighted by the perfect timing, she eagerly agrees, exclaiming that nothing beats good food. They arrive at a large, welcoming inn building. They enter the establishment, only to find it completely empty. The innkeepers, Marie and her husband Jacques, rush out to greet her, honored by her visit. Annette smiles, relieved to finally receive a warm welcome after feeling so out of place. The innkeepers are ecstatic that she knows their son Leon's name. Jacques eagerly asks what her grace would like to eat. Annette requests extra spicy tomato stew, delighting Marie, who knows the local style. Jacques suggests pairing the stew with white wine, which surprises Annette. Marie admits she got carried away preparing a massive feast to impress the Duchess. With a kind smile, Marie offers to leave so Annette can enjoy her meal. Annette invites them to join her, but Marie politely declines out of propriety. Insisting it's boring to eat alone, Annette warmly welcomes them to stay. She then extends the invitation to Sir Norton, who is taken aback. The three of them stand speechless, stunned by her kind offer. The four enjoy a warm, sparkling meal together around the table. Annette savors the stew, proclaiming it's absolutely delicious and exactly what she wanted. Jacques pours her a glass of wine, happy that she's enjoying herself. Sir Norton cautiously warns her not to drink too much, noting it's her third glass. Laughing, she boasts of being an undefeated office drinker who can hold her liquor. A flashback shows her smiling confidently with wine, narrating it was her last memory of the inn. She awakens disoriented as a man in a white robe carries her through a hallway. She looks up to see the Duke holding her, wondering how she ended up in his arms. In a flashback, a cheerful Annette pops the cork on a wine bottle, impressing her dinner guests. The flashback continues as she expertly pours wine for everyone, much to their amazement. As Jacques suggests she slow down, Annette dismisses his concern while Marie looks on admiringly. She chugs her wine, recalling her past life's title as the liquor sales director. A memory shows her victorious after outdrinking clients in her previous life. She remembers being criticized for networking over drinks as she sips her wine. She looks towards Jacques, responding to something he said. Annette sincerely thanks the couple for their warm welcome despite her sudden visit. Jacques proudly declares her an official northerner who no one would dare dislike. Blushing, she wonders aloud if she's truly a northerner now. The couple reassures her that the people of Blenheim will come to love her. When Annette asks if the Duke is also warm-hearted, the couple suddenly freezes. She hopefully asks if the Duke has a warm heart, even though he avoids her. A grim image of the Duke appears as the innkeepers struggle to find an answer. Drunk and disheartened, she slumps onto the table, complaining that he avoids her every day. A maid gently tucks the passed-out Duchess into bed. Startled, Annette sits bolt upright, resolved not to be helpless since she knows his location. With a newfound plan, she asks the surprised maid to bring her some tea. Gripping a tea cart, she decides to barge in on the Duke to share tea. With a determined smile, she pushes the tea cart, ready to confront him. She declares it's time for her last resort to settle things once and for all. As Annette wheels the cart down the hall, the maid anxiously wonders if she should intervene. Arriving at his door with a tea tray, she tentatively calls out for the Duke. Now sober, she hesitates, thinking that barging in might be a bit much. A click sounds as a door opens, and she assumes it's the bathroom. The Duke emerges from the room, wearing only a loosely tied white robe. They both blush, staring at each other in stunned silence. The Duke demands to know how she got in, while she flusteredly apologizes for his state of undress. Shuffling nervously, she confesses that she just wanted to see him. She stumbles backward with a cry, the tea tray tipping precariously. The Duke's eyes widen with alarm at her sudden fall. She falls backward as the tea spills through the air. In a rosy flashback, Annette blissfully savors her meal, patting her full stomach with a satisfied smile. The Duke catches Annette as she falls, holding her close in a tender, sparkling embrace. Crash! The white teapot smashes on the floor. Thud. Annette lands directly on top of the Duke. The Duke looks down at her with a pained and concerned expression. He holds her protectively as she lies atop him in a soft, ethereal light. He helps her sit up, asking if she's all right. She stammers that she's fine and asks after him. The Duke looks bewildered, internally questioning how he could possibly be all right. Annette gasps, pointing out that the Duke is bleeding from a long gash on his arm. With a worried expression, she asks if his injury hurts a lot. He holds up a hand, sternly telling her not to move as she stares back in confusion. An elderly butler bursts in asking what happened, and the Duke orders him to escort Annette to her room. Annette urges the butler to treat the Duke's injury, but the butler insists he will handle it himself. She glances back at the Duke, who stands silently with his back turned to her. Alone in her room, Annette sits on the bed, blaming herself for barging into his room. Her expression grows pensive as she thinks that, despite the chaos, something felt different. She recalls the moment she fell, her face just inches from his as she looked into his eyes. Standing now, she clutches her chest, trying to process the memory. Replaying the fall, she realizes his expression wasn't one of hatred, but of fear, and has a sudden epiphany. A shocking realization hits her. She completely forgot about the Duke's curse. A narration explains that a great blue dragon once needed a safe place to store its mana. The previous Duke received the dragon's mana core, won the war, and was hailed as a hero. However, unable to handle the immense power, the previous Duke tragically passed away. That same fate was then passed down to the current Duke when he was just a boy. There are only two ways to calm the dragon's magic when it runs wild inside his body. The first is to expend physical energy, which is why he constantly fights demon beasts. The second method is to transfer the mana to a woman possessing holy power. A vision of hands clasped in prayer appears. The original story reveals the only woman with that ability was the Saintess, Constance. A solemn, purple-haired saintess is shown as the text explains other women suffer intense pain from his touch. In the worst cases, a dark warning appears. Contact with him could lead to death. Annette finally understands that he was avoiding her to protect her from harm. But as she processes this, a new, startling thought crosses her mind. The next morning, the Duke wakes up with a soft groan. He sits up abruptly, a look of utter surprise on his face. Staring at his hand, he wonders in disbelief if he actually slept through the entire night. Elsewhere, Annette looks flustered, her cheeks flushed with a faint blush. The Duke remembers the fall, recalling that he clearly felt his mana flowing into her body. The intimate moment of him holding her flashes through his mind again. His expression is one of deep contemplation as he processes the memory. Annette's peaceful, sleeping face from that moment appears in his thoughts. Now fully dressed, the Duke sits across from Annette and states he'll get straight to the point. Annette listens attentively, a hint of nervousness on her face. He bluntly tells her she must return to the capital immediately, leaving her shocked and confused. The Duke internally vows to control his own fate, viewing the dragon's power as a dreadful, lifelong prison. She argues that she is his wife and Blenheim is her home, but he coldly informs her a carriage will depart tomorrow. Realizing sympathy won't sway him, Annette's expression hardens with resolve. She startles him by declaring that she also wants a divorce. Annette then clarifies her terms. She will stay for 1 year before disappearing without a trace. The Duke immediately rejects her offer, prompting her to think how incredibly stubborn he is. Annette correctly guesses his motives, defiantly stating she has no intention of leaving. She threatens to lie about sharing their wedding night if he sends her away. The Duke flushes, shocked and flustered by her bold declaration. In a chibi argument, he asks if she has any shame, while she pleads that she is desperate to stay for 1 year. He calmly tells her the length of time isn't the issue. The Duke reveals his inherited curse, explaining any woman who touches him suffers intense pain or even death. He urges her to leave for her own sake. Entrusting her with a secret known to few, she internally questions why he'd tell her, the daughter of his enemy. She recalls the original story where only a saintess could help, realizing she felt no pain when near him. She resolves to touch him one more time to be certain. She declares that she wasn't hurt at all, leaving him speechless. Annette smiles with relief, her hand over her chest. She props her head up with a confident and knowing smile. The Duke is stunned into silence, a faint blush on his face. Annette internally marvels at his innocence, while he admits he knows he's not someone she would like. The chibi duo argues, with her pointing out he still wants her gone even though the curse is ineffective, which he denies. She collapses to the floor, dramatically claiming that if she returns home, people will say she was abandoned. Sniffle? She tearfully insists she has nowhere else to go, making him look on with concern. Sob, sob. Her soft crying makes his eyes widen in surprise. He reluctantly agrees she can stay, warning her not to forget his words. The Duke kneels down beside Annette as she sits on the floor. She peeks through her fingers, a faint blush on her cheeks. With a triumphant smile, she holds up a blank piece of paper. He watches her celebrate, confused by her sudden change from crying to joy. A blank contract and a blue quill are presented. She stands over his desk with the contract, insisting it's necessary while he questions her. Annette smirks, thinking he has no idea how terrifying contracts can be. The contract is shown, stating Loic Blenheim and Annette Frice will divorce in 1 year. Annette smiles brightly, formally placing herself in his care. Duke Loic looks on, flustered and sweating nervously. He formally takes her hand to seal their agreement. He gently kisses the back of her hand. She smiles, satisfied that her plan is now certain. Annette hums happily as she walks, feeling her mind is at ease after their talk. She steels her resolve, knowing her quiet life will be impossible if rumors spread about her doing nothing. She arrives at the Duke's door and calls out to him. Finding the room silent, she wonders why he isn't answering. The door opens to reveal the Duke, who addresses her as "my lady." She wishes him a good morning and asks what he's doing at her door. She boldly suggests they have breakfast together and walks past him. As she worries she came too early, he accepts her sudden intrusion. Noticing his unfastened collar, she offers to tie his cravat, but he refuses. His refusal leaves her looking downcast and questioning him. Achibi Annette brandishes a rapier, insisting she's good at tying knots, while Achibi Loic defends himself with a shield. He blocks her advance, firmly stating he can tie it himself. She lunges again, insisting she is really good at it. He parries her strike, claiming he is good at it too. With pleading eyes, she says she just wants to try. He glares suspiciously from behind his shield, wary of her persistence. Leaning in close, he quietly asks her if this is acceptable. With a sparkling smile, Annette promises to make his cravat look pretty. Seeing his tense expression, she reassures him that she'll be quick. She stands before the Duke, carefully adjusting the scarf around his neck. Her cheeks flush slightly as she concentrates on her task. The Duke startles her, asking how long she plans to keep calling him "my lady." When he asks what he should call her instead, she reminds him that she's his wife now and to call her the Duchess. Annette then playfully suggests he could also call her Annette, or perhaps even darling. Flustered, the Duke firmly states he'll call her Duchess, which she happily accepts. With a radiant smile, she extends her hand towards him. Arriving in the dining hall, two butlers greet her and begin to announce the morning's menu. She is stunned to see the Duke has come down for breakfast, clutching his arm in surprise. Her hand grips his arm tightly in a moment of shock. The butlers and a chef stare in utter disbelief, shocked to see them arm in arm. The two of them eat in a formal, quiet atmosphere at opposite ends of a long table. After finishing her meal, Annette remarks that it was another wonderful breakfast. She looks over at the Duke and compliments his truly exceptional chef. He replies that he's glad it suited her taste as a slice of strawberry cake is served. The beautifully presented slice of strawberry shortcake gleams on the plate. A chibi version of Annette happily digs into the delicious-looking cake. Enjoying her dessert, she lets out a satisfied as the Duke asks if she likes cake. She explains that it's the strawberries from Rondoris that are incredible, which the Duke notes. Hearing it's a breathtaking place, she muses that she'd love to visit Rondoris someday. She then jokes that she might get to go for his wedding in a year, causing him to freeze, stunned. Noticing his shocked reaction, she covers her mouth and laughs, explaining she was only joking. Later, Annette wanders through a grand hall, thinking she has far too much free time. She strolls aimlessly for a moment before clearing her throat with a loud, The butler, Whiteley, appears, informing her that the Duke plans to walk in the garden this afternoon. The news gives Annette a sudden spark of inspiration. Dressed in a beautiful yellow and black gown, she presents herself, much to the butler's delight. The Duke stands alone outside, his profile lit by the winter sun. He turns, surprised to see Annette approaching him in the snow-covered garden. She cheerfully claims it's perfect timing, while he hesitantly suspects it's not really a coincidence. While walking, she asks if he avoids maids because of his curse, but he claims he just dislikes being touched. She looks down thoughtfully, realizing the constant fear of hurting someone would make physical contact incredibly stressful. She feels a wave of sympathy for him, thinking how unbearable his situation must be. Noticing his cravat is askew, she points it out. He explains he just changed from his training clothes. As she fixes it, he remarks that she tied it exactly the same way. Noting her sharp eye, he reveals that he never undid her knot, feeling it would be wrong, which leaves her momentarily stunned. She realizes he must have carefully removed and replaced the cravat, as a nervous Duke looks on. Amused, she asks if he liked her knot that much, but he insists it just felt improper to undo her careful work. Delighted by his sentiment, she beams and offers to tie it for him anytime he wants. The Duke looks away, a subtle blush on his cheek, as he seems touched by her offer. That evening, Annette knocks on the Duke's door, quietly asking if he's asleep. Hearing a crash, she worries that he broke something else and thinks he needs an attendant. The Duke opens the door, asking if her visit is for something urgent. Internally, she resolves to get close enough that he can't push her away, leaving him confused by her determined stare. She smiles and clarifies that she just wanted to say goodnight, asking to come in for a moment. Peeking through the cracked door, he declines, stating he isn't properly dressed to receive her. She blocks the door with her foot, arguing that since he's not undressed, there shouldn't be a problem. She reflects that, by his logic, she isn't properly dressed for a visit either. Annette looks on with wide, surprised eyes, a hand held to her chest. Peeking from the door, the Duke calls her attire inappropriate, thinking she's missed the bigger problem. Bam! She pushes the door open, cheerfully promising she'll just warm up and leave. She insists she promises, as he internally groans that she's relentless. She sits by his bedside, taking his hand as he lies in bed looking at her. With a sparkling aura, Annette smiles with pure, blissful happiness. The Duke lies in bed, looking utterly confused and annoyed. He thinks in disbelief that she was only supposed to stay for a moment. His thoughts drift in confusion, wondering how it all ended up like this. Standing beside him, she surveys the room, realizing she was too out of it to see it properly last time. She flashes back to the reason she was dazed, their passionate embrace by the water. She observes that for a Grand Duke's room, it's surprisingly simple. She cutely asks if he was asleep, and if she woke him, he denies it. Announcing this won't do, she declares she'll put him back to sleep and firmly tells him to lie down. As she sits on a stool at the foot of his bed, he stares back, completely baffled by her actions. She proudly claims she's great at it, recalling how her work reports always made the executives nod off. He runs a hand through his hair in frustration, asking if she takes him for a child. She quickly denies it, though her expression is uncertain. She remembers a scene from the novel The Holy Bride's Secret, where the Saintess soothed the Duke with her manna. The passage describes how the Saintess's light touch made the pain in Loic's body vanish instantly. Connecting the dots, she concludes that the more she touches him, the more his pain will fade. A montage of her recent intimate moments with the Duke flashes through her mind. The Duke's calm but stern face fills the frame. With crossed arms, she declares she won't leave until he lies down, regardless of what servants might think, leaving him to wonder what they could possibly misunderstand. He sighs, telling her to do as he says if she wants him to leave, and internally despairs at her impossible stubbornness. She asks if he doesn't like it, and he clutches his head, shouting that of course he does. He finally relents, lying back on the bed with a thump. Lying down, he warns her not to try anything foolish, reminding her he's a trained knight. She asks in disbelief if he thinks she would attack him, and he tells her to reflect on her own words and actions. Turning away with a pained expression, she thinks to herself that he won't yield a single word. She gently takes his hand, reassuring him that he'll drift off to sleep once it warms up. She smiles softly, noticing the tension in his hand has melted away, making him look calmer. Placing her other hand over his, she notes how big his hand feels. The Duke's expression softens as he begins to relax. Annette watches over him with a gentle, caring gaze. He finally falls into a peaceful sleep. His sleeping face looks serene and untroubled. Click, standing by the now closed door, Annette thinks the experience feels strangely surreal. She touches the door, reflecting that simply reading about his pain in the novel felt like nothing compared to this. She realizes the novel brushed over what must be his constant, unending suffering. Walking down the corridor, she resolves not to treat him lightly like some character to be captured. From a nearby balcony, a voice calls out, "What?" Overhearing two maids, Annette learns one change shifts for another whose husband sprained his ankle. She continues to listen as the maids gossip that the accident happened when the couple's kids barged in on them. The maids giggle, speculating that the couple might end up with a third child. A sterner maid with freckles confronts them, demanding to know what they are doing there at this hour. The freckled maid stares at them with a serious, disapproving look. The other maids claim they were just standing there, but the stern maid presses them, prompting one to explain there's no hot water in Her Highness's room. Peeking from a corner, Annette recognizes the familiar voice of one of her maids. A brown-haired maid complains about the cold water, and the stern, freckled maid explains it must have cooled quickly. The freckled maid sternly orders the other to reboil the water. The other maid refuses, complaining she's exhausted and annoyed before walking away, leaving the freckled maid alone. The freckled maid sighs, resigning herself to a trip to the kitchen. As she turns to leave, she catches a glimpse of Annette watching from the balcony above. Annette overhears the maid complaining about having to go to the kitchen so late. While the maid walks down the stairs, Annette resolves to ask for her name next time, grateful for her help. The freckled maid pauses on the stairs with a determined expression. The next morning, a radiant Annette greets the Duke with a brilliant smile. The Duke, looking well-rested, awkwardly returns her good morning. Annette compliments his glowing face, musing that he must have slept well and that she should try something new today. In a chibi thought bubble, the Duke apologizes for the previous night, leaving Annette confused. He explains he's sorry for falling asleep, but she reassures him that was her goal all along. She slyly teases that after experiencing her comforting touch, he'll find it hard to sleep alone again. Later, in his office, the Duke formally asks the Grand Duchess why she's there. Annette smiles brightly, stating she was bored while holding a book on tying cravats. He tells her he has work to do, but she insists she won't be a bother. Thump. She settles into a nearby chair, telling him to continue with his work while she reads. The Duke silently watches her as she begins to read her book. She internally resolves to learn more ways to tie his cravat from the book. She's appalled by the book's terribly drawn stick figure illustrations, wondering if the publisher ran out of money. Peeking over her book, she dismisses it as a sloppy guide. She gazes at the Duke, thinking he himself is far more of a masterpiece. A close-up shows the Duke's sharp, focused eyes. He catches her staring and asks if she needs something. The Duke looks away, a subtle blush creeping up his neck. His ear turns a vibrant, flustered red. He accuses her of saying such compliments easily, but she defensively retorts that her standards are very high. A tiny Annette pops up on his shoulder, insisting she would never say such things if she didn't mean them. Click. A young man with orange hair opens the door, announcing he has the commander's training schedule. Startled, he quickly greets the Grand Duchess with a bow. Annette happily greets Sir Leon, leaving the Duke to wonder how she knows his name. The Duke takes the schedule, telling Sir Leon to wait while he reviews it. Annette strikes up a conversation with Sir Leon, who reveals his mother, Madame Marie, hasn't stopped boasting about the Duchess's visit to her inn. As Annette listens, delighted, Leon explains his mother was so overjoyed she cooked non-stop feasts all week. Annette asks if she can visit again sometime, making Sir Leon beam, while the Duke's eye twitches in the foreground. The Duke sternly interrupts, ordering Sir Leon to leave and return in an hour. Sir Leon quickly agrees, confused about what he might have done wrong. After the door closes, the Duke remarks on her growing closeness with the knights, and she confirms she was speaking with Sir Leon. She casually asks how old Sir Leon is, and the Duke immediately questions her reason for asking. A dark, electric aura of jealousy emanates from the Duke, his face completely shadowed. The Duke internally seethes, asking if she just called another man cute, while Annette wonders if her comment was rude. The Duke fumes, recalling her claim that she doesn't give compliments lightly. Tugging at his cravat, he grits his teeth, thinking that Sir Leon is hardly at an age to be considered cute. The scene shifts to Annette diligently writing at a desk in the office. She pauses her writing, looking up thoughtfully into the distance. The Duke stands, announcing he has to leave and will be back late due to a full schedule. Annette's eyes widen with a hint of concern. The Duke coldly suggests she gives out compliments far too easily. As he looks away, flustered, Annette internally admires how perfectly his outfit suits him. In a chibi thought bubble, she critiques his sleeves and wonders about men's fashion in the capital. Pop! She suddenly recalls the only other man she knows from the capital, a stern, blonde-haired gentleman. A memory of a beautiful, ornate jewelry box filled with sparkling gems flashes by. Returning to her writing, she resolves to send a thank you letter to Ferdin, even if he won't be pleased. She sighs in frustration, wondering why he'd send a box of jewels through an attendant instead of speaking to her directly. Realizing her letter doesn't feel right, she crumples it up, determined to rewrite it. A brief transitional image shows the elegant floral design of her stationery. As she begins to write again, she wonders how he possibly knew she was running away. She grimaces, struggling to write as forcing the words feels incredibly awkward. The freckled maid arrives with a snack tray, prompting Annette to recognize her. She identifies the maid as the stuffy one she encountered the day before. Annette's eyes sparkle as she admires the pretty assortment of pastries. She offers a slice of cake to the maid, who looks up in surprise. After the maid shyly thanks her, Annette takes a bite of a small strawberry tart. While eating a strawberry, she marvels at how such fruit can grow so well in the cold northern climate. Feeling her mind clear after the snack, a chibi Annette feels energized and ready to focus. She decides to start her letter with a proper greeting before figuring out what else to say. The freckled maid asks if she should throw out the crumpled papers on the floor, and Annette agrees. The maid quietly picks up the discarded letters from the floor. She pauses for a moment, her expression turning serious as she glances at a crumpled page. The story pauses to display a promotional image for another series. A series of promotional images for other comics are displayed. Join now and get a free one-on-one consultation with a specialist to help you start your journey today. Snow falls softly over the Grand Ducal Castle under a deep purple night sky. Later that night, Annette knocks on the Duke's door to announce her arrival. The Duke opens the door, his expression grim as he looks down at her. He steps into the hallway, closing the door behind him, and asking for a moment of her time. He tells her there was something he didn't get to say earlier, firmly requesting that she stop visiting his room at night. She asks what's wrong with it since they're husband and wife, but he coldly reminds her they'll be divorced in a year. He acknowledges her goodwill, but asks her to stop disrupting his life. Flinching at his words, she asks if she makes him that uncomfortable. He closes his eyes wearily, explaining he is used to being alone and must live that way. Annette tries to find a loophole, cheerfully asking if only nighttime visits are forbidden, but he sternly clarifies that's not what he meant. Her smile vanishes as she finally seems to understand the weight of his rejection. She looks down sadly at the bottle of scented oil she brought, her plan to give him a hand massage now ruined. The Duke stands alone in the dimly lit hallway after she leaves. Back in his room, he walks towards his vanity, thinking he shouldn't have confided in her about the curse. He picks up a letter from the vanity table. The letter reports that rumors of Annette being the Marchioness's illegitimate daughter are credible. In a flashback, a brown-haired man is seen delivering the report. The man asks if the Duke will still be cold after this, calling Annette our Duchess, a phrase the Duke recalls with contempt. He remembers the man's conclusion. Regardless of the truth, the Marquis will use Annette one way or another. He stares at his hand as a faint power seems to glow from it. He solemnly predicts that chaos will soon descend upon his home, Blenheim. Turning his back, he gazes out a large window at the snowy night. A painful memory of his father begins to surface. In a flashback, his father collapses, screaming in agony and despair that the curse has been passed to his son because of a contract with the dragon. Tears streaming down his face, the father cries out in grief that his son, Loic, must now inherit this pain that's worse than death. The Duke's eye widens in sheer horror. No, he cries out in a memory, his anguish echoing. He resolves that, unlike his father, he will be the one to end this wretched, painful bloodline. Gazing out at the snow, he reflects that even in this cold, spring will eventually arrive. A new day seems to dawn, bringing with it a change of scene. Memory surfaces of a younger, blonde-haired Annette happily declaring her love for fruit. The Duke smirks faintly, recalling the memory. An old memory recounts Annette's bright smile and gentle voice. Her radiant smile fills the memory. Her voice echoes, pleading to be allowed to stay for just 1 year. In a flashback, she promises to leave without a trace after her year is up. Clenching his fist, the Duke reminds himself that she is leaving and just needs a temporary refuge. He knows he can't get used to her warmth, for he could never return to his lonely life. He hardens his heart, vowing not to be swayed by anyone ever again. Tap, tap. A gray-haired butler enters, reporting that he has placed the Duke's order. The Duke nods in approval, commending his good work. He then instructs the butler to place a small ottoman next to the sofa in his office. The butler blushes, thoughtfully concluding that a small one would be best for the Duchess. The Duke turns away, flustered by the butler's knowing assumption. The butler imagines how delighted she'll be, reading comfortably while eating strawberries. Ahem. Clearing his throat, the Duke insists to himself that he is not being swayed by Annette. The Duke sits at his desk, watching Annette across from him. He hums to himself as she quietly reads her book before closing it with a sigh. His gaze remains fixed on her. He blushes, covering his mouth, flustered by her quiet presence. The scene shifts to Annette reading in a sunroom, as the butler serves her tea and pastries. She worries that if she tries to check on the Duke, he might banish her for good. Distracting herself with delicious strawberries, she wonders why there's been so much fruit lately. A man's footsteps approach as he calls out to the Grand Duchess. A brown-haired man in a green vest smiles warmly at her. He greets her, explaining he was away on business and had a lot of work to catch up on. Ahem. A sharp cough deliberately interrupts their conversation. Annette looks over, startled by the sound. The Duke stands nearby, looking stern after clearing his throat. He formally greets her, stating he was on his way to the watchtower for business. She feels a pang of disappointment, thinking he's still in a foul mood. She notices his unbuttoned collar, wondering why he isn't wearing a cravat. The brown-haired man notes she's reading, and she cheerfully confirms it's a cookbook. The man leans in to read the title of her book. The title is revealed, 100 Recipes for a Wife to Earn Her Husband's Love, leaving the Duke mortified. The Duke blushes, exasperatedly asking where she finds such bizarre books. A tiny Annette proudly declares she found it in the castle library. Changing the subject, she asks if she can accompany him on his way to the watchtower. The Duke looks away, momentarily flustered by her request. The trio walks together down a sunlit corridor. The Duke advises her to finish her walk and then read inside, away from the cold. Annette shivers, remarking that it has felt strangely cold inside the manor as well. She pointedly suggests it's because someone told her not to visit, making the Duke stammer that he only meant at nighttime. The brown-haired man looks on, utterly confused by their exchange. While the man offers her a different room, the Duke sternly interrupts, insisting she can stay in his office. Annette cheerfully asks the brown-haired man if he's going to his office. In a chibi thought bubble, she asks about tomorrow, but the Duke confirms he'll be gone then too, She asks if he's deliberately avoiding her, and a flustered Duke denies it. He explains that he'll be at the knight's full training session all day tomorrow. Whoa! Her eyes sparkle as she excitedly asks if she can come watch. The brown-haired man says, "Of course," but the Duke firmly interrupts with, "No." Under the Duke's glare, the man nervously decides it's better to stay quiet. The Duke dismisses her, stating training is not a sight for outsiders. Walking together, she sadly questions being called an outsider. She tells him his words are too harsh. Continuing, she reminds him that she is his wife, leaving him momentarily stunned. She points to the brown-haired man, revealing he was the proxy who married her in his stead. Her hand gestures to the sparkling wedding ring on her finger. As the Duke realizes what the ring is, she asks for confirmation from Sir Perel, who stammers in response. She argues that she must be formally introduced to the knights at some point. As she justifies it as a good opportunity, the Duke quietly considers the idea of a formal introduction. She confronts him directly, asking if he'd never even planned on introducing her at all. He internally admits he never planned for a duchess, and realizes he's a terrible husband. She hopefully asks if he could truly be so indifferent to his wife. Taking his silence as agreement, she beams, declaring his decision wonderful. A tiny Annette announces she just remembered something and must be on her way. She hurries off, leaving the Duke and Sir Perel behind. The Duke calls out to Perel, who formally responds, "Yes, Commander." He abruptly orders the knights assembled at once, confusing Perel, who notes his watchtower plans. The Duke's face darkens as a furious energy emanates from him. He demands to know if Perel wants the Duchess to be disappointed or think their knights are inferior. Now motivated, Sir Perel agrees to assemble the knights, as the Duke orders them to come fully equipped for his inspection. The Duke and Sir Perel stand together, both looking serious and determined.